Well, good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Merry holidays. It is that time of the year, and you will notice this is my favorite time of year. Yes, I'm going to do all the cheesy things. I'm going to be playing the cheesy music. I'm going to be using the Christmassy backgrounds. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Do you know why I love this time of year? 'Cause people are nice, right? Like, people are so rude all year round. And I mean, not everybody's nice, but it seems like around the holidays, there's not as many assholes out and about. Or if there are assholes, they're keeping themselves in check more. And I appreciate that. I like less assholes. I think that's a good thing. We're doing a UFO news update, and we're going to cover a few things. So, obviously, with the age of disclosure dropping, a lot of the news about UFOs out there right now has to do with that film, the implications of that documentary. We talked about it a little bit on my last UFO episode. There's been some new interviews, some new developments since then. In particular, this crazy cat alien that just hopped on my shoulder. They are aliens, y'all. But the Dan Farah interview that we're going to watch just came out a couple days ago. Actually, I think it was yesterday. And again, my favorite interviews are the ones on like the local channels, the local news stations, anyhow, not the big cable network news. And it is an interview on a local news channel. And it looked pretty interesting. I haven't watched it, so we're going to react to it together, but it looks pretty interesting. Joe Rogan went on Jesse Michaels, talked about his weird dream, which I swear, I think I said this before, my episode I did with Brian Jackson, the night before that episode, I had a very somewhat similar, very, very intense dream. Extremely vivid, and what felt more like an experience than a dream to me. I've never had a dream like that before. I haven't had a dream like that since, and I've had some weird dreams, y'all. But that one was different. And I specifically remember mentioning it to Brian the next day because it had such a big impact on me. Um, so yeah, we watched Rogan talk about his dream last week on the Michael show, and so this episode we're going to listen to him talk a little bit about the age of disclosure, kind of what he thinks about things there. Marco Rubio hasn't necessarily gone back on what he said in the documentary. However, he has made some statements to basically clarify, look, a lot of what I'm talking about is drones, like all these drone incursions that keep happening all around the world, and they happen here at our military bases, and we don't know where they're from and what they're doing. The last UFO episode I did, we looked at an official document about UAPs that listed drones with quotation marks. So it sounds like at least parts of the government is just as confused about these things as we are. So the statements that Rubio made could be looked at as trying to refocus it on something a little less out there, right? We got a man that's probably going to want to be president one day. Well, he obviously he's wanted to be president. He's ran for president, but he's going to try to be president again one day. And so he's probably got people telling him, sir, you need to distance yourself a little bit from this UFO topic because nobody gets the White House running on that. Not yet, anyhow. And then finally, we had Expedition X. So my wife is a huge fan of this show. Apparently, they found a fucking UFO in a lake. Now, I don't know if this is hype. I don't know if this is complete bullshit or if it's legitimate. But we're going to take a look at that and get your thoughts on that. Ron's got an interesting comment about dreams here. Good to see you, Ron. Says, spend the winter of 7 months at 7,000 feet and 22 feet of snow. No, thank you. In a school bus on gold claim, good dreams and astral projection. So I'm taking it you were out there trying to find some gold in them hills and had some strange dreams up there. I bet. I think definitely when we're out of our normal element physically, I think that certainly has an impact on our dreams. Like when I was on vacation, we were there for 6 nights, 7 days. And every one of those nights had very, very strange dreams. All right, let's get this thing kicked off. Now, we're going to start with Rubio. This was actually 4 years ago. So this is before the age of disclosure dropped. And this is also a time when media was giving more attention to the UFO UAP topic because of the gimbal and go fast and those videos, which I've actually pulled up some old reports. We're gonna take a look at those too, because there's something kind of weird about those videos. How they were released, why they were released, what happened afterwards, and we're starting to see more of a clear picture of what actually took place and how those videos got out. Well, isn't that interesting? UFOs seem to be the only conspiracy which Trump is not willing to exploit. I tell you, he's just not that into it. That was his quote. Yeah, I've heard some smart people say some interesting things, but I'm just not that into it. Huh? What? What the fuck does that mean? Yeah, so it is interesting. I agree that we're talking about a guy that was going to give us all the shit. He released more JFK documents. I mean, none of them really were like news stoppers, headline makers. But he did release a lot of the classified JFK stuff, which does really implicate the mob even more than they were already implicated in the whole debacle. But at any rate, we'll get back to the topic at hand here. So here's Rubio 4 years ago on Fox News. Looks like Fox Business. And this was his position at that time. And it sounds like the interviews he's giving recently, he's trying to kind of get back to this. Like, it sounds like he doesn't want to be painted as the UFO guy. He wants to be painted as the defense guy. And if there's unchecked stuff in the airspace above our military bases, well, you know the rest. Blah, 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 blah.
Unidentified objects in the air. I had an exclusive interview with the former director of national intelligence, John Ratcliffe, the other night on Fox News, where I asked him about this upcoming Pentagon report, which you, of course, have commissioned or encouraged to have a report on these unidentified objects. Here's John Ratcliffe with me last week. I've got to get your reaction to what's taking place. Have unidentified flying objects been seen?
Well, sure. We have lots of reports about what we call unidentified aerial phenomenon. There are a lot more sightings than have been made public. Sometimes we wonder whether or not our adversaries have technologies that are a little bit further down the road than we thought or that we realized.
So, Senator, what about that? What can you tell us about UFOs?
Well, we have things flying over military installations, over military exercises, and other places, and we don't know what it is. It isn't ours. It isn't anything that's registered with the FAA, and in many cases exhibits attributes of things we've never seen, technology, the kinds of technology we haven't seen before, or at least that's what it seems like. I think you have to know what it is, or we have to try to know what it is. That's my view of it, without any preconceived notions. Maybe there's a logical explanation. Maybe it's something that can be explained away. Maybe it's a foreign adversary who's made a technological leap, as you heard the former DNI said. Whatever it is, we need to know the answer to it. The problem with this issue is every time you raise it, people get all nervous. Oh, does this mean UFOs and aliens and extraterrestrial? We don't have to go that far. It's very simple. There are things flying over national security installations. We don't know who they are. We don't know what it is. It isn't ours. We need to find out.
Well, this is absolutely fascinating. So, I mean, from my standpoint, when I heard John Ratcliffe talk about that, I went and I looked up what you've said about the Pentagon report coming up June 1st. What do you think we're going to learn from that Pentagon report on June 1st?
Well, first, I'm not sure they're going to come in on time, to be honest with you, because they miss a lot of deadlines in government on these sorts of things. But we'll get a report at some point. Second is, I don't know if we're going to know what. I mean, I'm not sure that by June 1st they'll have reached a hard conclusion about what they're dealing with, and there may be more questions or new questions than full answers after the fact. I can tell you it's being taken more seriously now than it ever has been. And look, there's a stigma associated with this, all right? When a Navy pilot would report that they saw something, they were told you need to go see the flight surgeon, to check out your head, make sure you're not seeing things. So there's a stigma associated with reporting it, even talking to you about it now, right? I mean, people are going to go out and say, look what these people are focused on when the world is falling apart. So there's a stigma associated with it, and that's, I think, needs to go away. We don't have any preconceived notions about what this is or isn't. We just need to know, or we need to start trying to know. I think the first step is to ask the question. If you don't ask the question, you're not going to get or begin to get answers.
So it's not necessarily like that we have, little ETs running around, aliens, but it could be technology that China or Russia or somebody else has developed that could be ahead of the United States then. That's even more worrisome to me.
Well, again, I don't know. It would be very worrisome. I don't know that to be the case, but we need to start finding out.
Right. Now that sounds like very, very grounded and makes perfect sense. If there's weird shit flying above the sky, well, we probably want to know what that is. Especially if it's flying over our military bases. And you have reports of these soldiers not even like knowing how to respond. Now, I know they have since tried to address the issue, and they have a few different strategies they're working through. But, I could imagine being on post and seeing a drone swarm that isn't ours flying overhead. That's a serious issue. Despite anything about UFOs, UAPs, you don't need ET to tell you that that's a problem for your defense. So, all right. Ron, let's see. Ron's dropping some knowledge bombs here. Ron says, I'm assuming you're talking about Art Bell, was nonchalant until the Triangle spacecraft flew overhead. Be interesting to hear his wife's side of the story. Yeah. I wonder if she's done anything like that. Done any interviews like that. I for a while there was a couple on the radio. I think it was in the 60s. And the husband was like a broadcaster personality. And I believe the wife was an experiencer. And they would actually, and this is, way back in the day, they would do these live radio shows. I think it was out of Chicago. But yeah, so many interesting stories that don't get attention in this field. It's really interesting. Let's see. Ron says, I wrote on True Social, only the dilated vortex technology by Ronald Frederick Sykes has the fastest rate of induction delivering superior levitation for your personal spacecraft. And Elon's mom got back to you? That's crazy, bro. That's awesome. Hopefully that goes somewhere. Works out for you. Okay. Now, this is Marco Rubio 2 days ago. So the one we just watched was from 4 years ago. Lots happened since then. More drone incursions. More crazy things in the sky. And here's Rubio 2 days ago after Age of Disclosure has come out.
The jury is still out on just how fast and how far the bombshell Age of Disclosure documentary moves the needle on UFO disclosure. But according to a new report, we may be closer than you think. Journalist Michael Schellenberger published an article today quoting a senior advisor to Secretary of State and National Security Advisor Marco Rubio, who says, quote, "We are headed toward a massive disclosure." Now, just when that might happen, it remains vague, but it does reflect the sentiment of the moment. After several congressional hearings on Capitol Hill and whistleblowers like David Grush speaking out publicly on this show for the first time, it does feel as though we're closer than ever to our government acknowledging.
Okay, but let's take a reality check here. That was about a decade ago at this point. So it has been a decade, almost, since David Grush testified on the floor. And they're still 10 years later saying, we're close. We're getting real close, y'all.
Allegations that it has some sort of secret program trying to reverse engineer alien spacecraft. That allegation was examined thoroughly in the 1 hour, 50-minute documentary. Rubio was by far the most senior official who went on the record, on camera, demanding answers. And the documentary wasn't the first time that he's voiced his concern about this. He spoke to News Nation in 2023 and said individuals with high clearances to work on this top secret program are too afraid to speak out because they fear retribution.
Some of these people still work in the government, and frankly, a lot of them are very fearful of their jobs, fearful of their clearances, fearful of their career, and some, frankly, are fearful of harm coming to them.
It is not just government employees who are in the know. Rubio believes the U.S. government has handed over these UFOs, these spacecraft that they have found, to private military contractors. He says those contractors know more about these crafts than the U.S. government. National security risk? Sure sounds like it could be. Joining us now is Michael Schellenberger, journalist and founder of Public News. Welcome back to the show, Michael. Always great to have you on. So no less than the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, went on camera in this documentary saying publicly that the U.S. government has recovered alien technology from non-human sources and is currently working to reverse engineer it. That's pretty incredible, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Great to be with you, Elizabeth. It's already a historic moment. I mean, we've never had anybody at Rubio's level. And keep in mind, Rubio is also the National Security Advisor. The last time you had the Secretary of State and the National Security Advisor as the same person was Henry Kissinger between 1973 and 1975. Rubio is, arguably number 3, although the State Department is number 1 in foreign policy after the president. Elizabeth, I think what this all means is that the president needs to address this issue. He needs to speak directly to the American people and explain what's going on here. There is conflicting messages. The Department of War has the same line that they've had for years, which is very specific, and they say there's no evidence of extraterrestrials. I asked why they used that word because it wasn't a word I used, and they said, well, they referred me to their report. But look at what you have on the other side. You have not just, you have the president himself, the vice president, the director of national intelligence, the Secretary of State going further than any of them, and agreeing to even participate in this movie.
Yeah.
Is itself a major statement. So I think, look, there's conflicting messages. The president, I think, needs finally to address this issue.
It does feel like we've been building to this, these congressional hearings, these members of Congress. You know, for the longest time, Michael, it was like people with tinfoil hats were talking about UFOs, and they were dismissed as Looney Tunes. And slowly but surely, people still make fun of it. But, you know, there have been very serious congressional hearings with very serious whistleblowers testifying under oath. It does feel like we're getting to a moment, because especially in this documentary, it says it's not just the United States reverse engineering these spacecraft that we have found. Russia and China have also found craft and are also reverse engineering. And this is a secret arms race happening.
Yeah, I mean, you know, look, Elizabeth, people sometimes ask me, they go, what do you believe is happening? What do you, Michael Schellenberger, think is happening? Who cares? I mean, I really don't have, I don't have secret clearance. I don't have any confidential access to information. You should care what the Secretary of State says.
Right.
The director of the CIA, the director of national intelligence, the vice president. They're all saying that this is not just ridiculous and something that shouldn't be taken seriously, but you've still got the Department of War that's sort of dismissing it. I just think the way that this has progressed is that we're at a place now where it's like, look, Elizabeth, I can't do many more hours of podcasts, you know, speculating about this issue when we know that the people that run the government now have the power to tell us what it is. And like I said in my piece, if it's all a delusion and it's all, you know, a kind of circular reporting based on disinformation from the 50s and 60s, then the president should reveal that. But either way, you have very conflicting messages coming from the highest levels of our government. I think they need to figure out a way to deconflict that.
You know, we know, at least there are allegations in this documentary, Age of Disclosure, that in the first Trump administration, they seriously considered potentially going public with information like this, that George W. Bush also had 10 days of meetings where cabinet members discussed the implications of going public with the information. It's been going on that long, and they ultimately decided it was too cataclysmic for the world to handle.
Okay, so that could totally be true. That meeting, that research may have totally happened. But I want to stop it because this is a perfect example of circular reporting. What she just said is she's parroting what Hal Puthoff said on the Joe Rogan podcast. Hal Puthoff is a CIA agent / scientist / possible counterintelligence. Presented this information on the Joe Rogan show with zero evidence. So, that being said, it may be true, it may not. But again, they're parroting what the CIA said. And they're parroting it as if it is a fact. It's not a fact. The only one we know they did for a fact is the one we have paperwork on, the Brookings report. That's the only commissioned report that's not classified that we know of that says, yeah, maybe you shouldn't tell everyone because, you know people. Sometimes we overreact. You know, if we feel like there's aliens coming or here or whatever, some of them might take it a little too far. Not a crazy assessment. So again, it may be true, it may not be true. I just wanted to point out that this is why UFO researchers can lose their minds. Because when they go and they try to get the actual source of the information, It's been less than a year since that Hal Puthoff Joe Rogan interview. Give it another 5 to 10 years, and everything Hal Puthoff said in that Joe Rogan interview will be considered fact. How and why that works, I have no idea. But that's what will happen. And then imagine in 50 years, somebody looking back trying to figure out, where did that information come from? By that time, there will have been 5 million people that have repeated it. So that's why UFO researchers go crazy. And that is why I could not dedicate 100% of my time to this topic. I mean, first of all, there's just so much more out there. But second, you can't let it consume you. You know, it's a super interesting topic. Potential to change reality as we know it. But you got to spend some time in our reality as well. It's a good place to be, I promise. Let's see. We got some comments here. What's Steve got to say? Steve says, it would be cool if one of these newscasters is actually aware of the fact that we have had UFO hearings and whistleblowers for decades. Yes, it would. Always with the same unceremonious result and lack of evidence. Absolutely. Absolutely. And we just don't know motivations of some of them as well. You know, are they doing this because they want to write a book? And again, I've said this so many times, but I don't have a problem with people writing books. I really don't. I know that makes other people angry for whatever reason, but I get so much of my information from books, and somebody's got to write them. So, like, why are we giving authors a hard time for writing books? I think what it is when it's a bullshit and they're out there pushing bullshit. Like if Avi Loeb wrote a book called The Three-Eye Atlas Invasion, you know, that would be kind of irritating for someone like me. Yes, absolutely. Allegation does not equal confirmation, right? Just because Hal Puthoff says so does not make it so. You don't think someone that's been in the CIA for 60 years can lie to your face? People. They can. Ron says if they give you your personal spacecraft, they lose control and planet Earth explodes with activity. Now, I get that take. My take has always been, you want flying cars? Like, my mom can't even parallel park, and you want her to fly? Not gonna happen. Not gonna happen. Yeah, absolutely. Steve pointing out, great point here. This is how we end up with the tales or the lore, right? The Holloman Air Force Base alien meeting with Eisenhower. Claims almost unanimously regarded as outrageous initially become accepted as fact by the topic over years. Yeah, that's a fantastic point, Steve. Like, I remember hearing Rogan talk about what was the claim where I think it was Nixon was drinking with some musician and took him to see the UFO and the bodies when they were drunk, and the guy got so obsessed with UFOs, he designed a home that looks like a UFO in Beverly Hills or Southern California somewhere. So there's all kinds of stories like this they just sound completely ludicrous. What do you mean Nixon got drunk and he took a guy to go see UFOs and aliens? I can just imagine, you want to see something fucking crazy? Check this shit out. I can just see it, you know, find out. But anyway, yes, it's absolutely ridiculous, but Then you have Joe Rogan with like millions and millions and millions of followers saying, yeah, it might be true. The dude made a house that looks like a UFO. So, but what do I know? It could be true. That's the worst part. Boy, look at that grin. Is that not a shit-eating grin? I tell you what. Hey, wasn't Rubio the guy Trump said had small hands? I think that was him at that debate. I'll never forget that debate because I was like, oh, we're going with zero decorum. Like, negative decorum. No respect. Out the window. Gloves off. Look out. Crazy stuff. Okay. Now, this was, I think, recently, December 2nd. So, yeah, just a few days ago. Again, after the Age of Disclosure release. Oh, yeah. Hey, Steve, you called it. Thanks, buddy. Yeah, it was Jackie Gleason, Nixon and Gleason. Yes. And if you all want to hear a funny story, I'm sorry, I try not to say guys because, trying to be inclusive here on the Gabriel Speaks podcast. You all should go check out that video there's probably hundreds of videos, but that story in general is just insanely entertaining. It looks like Steve's got some knowledge on this. Let's see. So it ultimately traces back to Gleason's girlfriend. She told it 2 years after he died to the National Enquirer for thousands of dollars. Now that I can believe. Absolutely. Yeah, the National Enquirer, very interesting paper, if you can call it that. Okay, so here's Rubio 3 days ago.
Everyone asks you about it?
Sure.
It's a new document. We had repeated instances of something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities. It's not ours, and presidents operate on a need-to-know basis.
Yeah.
Okay, that is...
So a couple points on it. First of all, I'm not disavowing that. It was an interview that was done maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I was in the Senate.
Right.
So it wasn't recent. The second point I would make, I was describing the allegations that people have come forward with.
Okay, so right off the bat, and I'm going to rewind it in case you missed it, but right off the bat, he's distancing. Right? It's almost like we saw Trump do with Hegseth yesterday. He's putting some distance. I was a senator back then, and I was going off information I had back then, not the information I have now.
Something operating in the airspace over restricted nuclear facilities. It's not ours, and presidents operate on a need-to-know basis.
Yeah.
Okay, that is...
So a couple points on it. First of all, I'm not disavowing that. It was an interview that was done maybe 3 or 4 years ago when I was in the Senate.
Right.
So it wasn't recent. The second point I would make, I was describing the allegations that people have come forward with. People that came forward to us, some of these people were Navy pilots, admirals, generals, whatever, that would come forward and say that there were programs in the U.S. government that not even presidents were made aware of. So I was describing what people had said to me, not things that I have firsthand knowledge of in that regard. A little bit of selective editing, but it's okay.
Oh, wow. So that's interesting, folks. He's claiming he was basically, it's like hearsay, what you would call hearsay in a court of law, right? It's not what you said, it's what you heard someone else say about the topic. So Rubio hears someone say, well, not even the president is briefed on this stuff. He's in the interview with Dan, and I'm sure he cut out the preface of, well, I had heard this person say, or I was in a meeting with this person and they said, right? Cut that part out and just made it look as if he was saying there are presidents that are not. And that's a shame because that was really, I mean, they used that in the trailer. So that's not a great look right out of the gate.
Okay, because you're trying to sell a show there. But the fundamental comments, I haven't seen it, but the clips I've seen and people have shown me are fundamentally true. And that is, there are things, we know this has been documented. There have been things that fly over the airspace, restricted airspace, be it where we're conducting military exercises or the like, and everyone in the government says they're not ours. And so what I worry most about, just me personally, is that some adversary, another country, for example, has developed some asymmetric capability for surveillance or the like that we just are not prepared for. We're looking for missiles.
Boy, it almost sounds like the same thing that Matt Leibelsberger was worried about. In fact, he was so worried he blew up a Cybertruck in front of Trump Tower to try to garner attention on the matter.
And fighter jets, and they're coming at us with drones and balloons. Yeah. Remember, when NORAD turned on the radars and started looking for balloons, all of a sudden they spotted a bunch of balloons flying overhead. 90% of them were innocent, things. A couple of them were Chinese. And so, but we never look for balloons because our radars aren't trained for that. So that really was the point I was trying to drive at. I can't comment on the rest of the documentary. It has, as I said, claims from people that were former admirals, naval fighters, people with high clearances in government. Some of them are pretty spectacular claims. I'm not calling these people liars. I don't have independent knowledge that what they're saying is true. The one observation I had is we had people that did very important jobs in the U.S. government who are saying these things. So we have people with very high jobs in the U.S. government that are either A, liars, B, crazy, or C, telling the truth. And two of those three options are not good. But I don't know the answer. I don't know the answer. I don't have any point of, I don't want to call them liars. I just don't have any independent way to verify everything they said.
I spent time, I've been talking to the mother of the National Guardsman that's in a hospital here in D.C. who's clinging to life.
Yeah.
The issue of the vetting of Afghan nationals. We learned that so many of them had so many warning signs, and I'll put up on the screen the statistics. We took in 76,000. There were over 5,000.
Okay, so I think that's about all we're going to get on age of disclosure from Rubio. So I put a little question up. We touched on it briefly before. Would full disclosure cause panic or clarity? What do you all think? Like, if we look to the Brookings report, I'm not going to drudge it up. I've done it before on the show. We've talked about it. But if you look at that Brookings report, they make a very valid argument for why disclosure of another intelligent species could cause a huge amount of panic. And that's something, the panic can be dangerous by itself. When people are in a crowd and something dangerous happens, people get killed in the stampede running away, right? So it doesn't have to necessarily be the act that gets you hurt. Just being in the vicinity can get you in trouble. And would this set off too many unstable folks in a negative way that it just wouldn't be worth it? It's something I've pondered a lot, especially like if I'm interviewing a guest or something. I ponder it a lot. Is it something we can handle? Because we go crazy over the strangest things. A great book about this is American Cosmic. Are we forming some type of religion here? Some type of belief system? Well, the Greys are this. The insectoids are, they do that. The reptilians, they do this other thing. So you have like different sects, right? Different belief systems for those different so-called species. Oh, the Zeta Reticulans, they're about this. Whereas the tall whites from the other galaxy, I can't recall the name, they believe this. It's pretty wild to think about when you look at it that way. At least for me, you start going, huh? that's interesting, because you start thinking about like the rabbis of old debating on what should go into the holy text and what should not. What does the holy text mean when it says this? It's almost like a current day version of that. At least I think you can say with some confidence a portion of it is. I mean, we know there are just flat out UFO religions. But is all of ufology, the study and research of UFOs, a religion? No. No. But it could become that if we don't ask tougher questions and we keep doing circular reporting and we keep depending on CIA folks for our information. All right. Dan Farah, like I was saying, this is a recent interview just did. I think it was yesterday. Speaking to the Age of Disclosure, some of the reception it's gotten. Again, I haven't watched this one either. So let's check it out.
Let me just start with this. I just watched it this morning, actually. I streamed it. I do want to just say I thought it was as compelling as it was comprehensive. So I want to congratulate you. I've been doing this for over 30 years, and this has been a sort of a passion project for me. I used to joke with people that I'm a card-carrying member of the Fraternal Order of the Tinfoil Hat Society, and I made that joke because more often than not, when I was asking members of Congress or scientists or anyone to comment on it, I would usually get the glance or the stare or the stigma that you talk about in the film. And I guess my first question is, after watching the film, it's my belief that that's going to put to rest much of the stigma attached to the issue of UAPs in particular. Was that one of your missions, or was that a byproduct of what came out of the film?
I think it's a byproduct of what came out of the film. Look, I made the film in pursuit of the truth. Like a lot of people, I grew up curious about this topic. I was a child of the 80s and early 90s, so I grew up on movies like Close Encounters and E.T. and TV shows like X-Files. And like those films and TV shows did for a lot of people, they just made me curious. They made me wonder, are we alone in the universe? Does the US government know more about this than the public? And so for my directorial debut, I decided to go make a documentary that pursued the truth and make a documentary that did that by only interviewing people who have direct knowledge of this topic as a result of working for the US government. And what I quickly found out was that it's taken extremely seriously by people in the intelligence community, military, and government, and that the stigma we have in our country is not only ridiculous and unjustified, but it is actually a hurdle to people in the military, government, intelligence community doing something about this issue, because every time they try to, put resources towards it, they're contending with that same nonsensical stigma, and it's a hurdle. We also found out. I also found out doing the interviews that the stigma was created by people in the 40s and 50s who had the job of covering this up. And they thought the easiest way to prevent people from looking into this and taking it serious, and to prevent newsmen like yourself from reporting on it, would be to create a cultural stigma, to make people think they're silly and nutty for looking into it. And clearly that worked, and that idea got into our culture and created this present day issue where a lot of people, prior to this film, were afraid to talk about it. They thought they would look silly. They thought they'd get made fun of. A lot of leaders were afraid to get in front of this issue because of that. But I do think this film ends that. I think that the result of this film being out there for the whole world to see will be a general acknowledgement that this is a valid area of inquiry. This is a serious issue, and not only a national security issue for every nation, but an issue for all of humanity. And it's something we have to contend with and acknowledge and smartly deal with.
As a career journalist, I of course appreciated the relationship between the media and the government in getting much of the information that we now have out. In particular, the anecdotal reports from the naval aviators and some of the others who encountered these UAPs. Can you just? I want people to watch the movie. Obviously, that's my goal, because I do think it is profoundly different than what we've seen in the past. But just for the people who may not have ever heard of observables, for example, can you give me just one or two that in your mind really open the eyes of those people that may not understand just the chasm, the difference in technology between what we have and what we have observed?
Yeah, so when you say the observables, that's a term that a number of people in the intelligence community and military community and government have been using to sum up the flight characteristics displayed by UAP, right? UAP are performing in ways that defy physics as we currently understand them, right? And what we see them doing is performance that we are not capable of doing. So, for example, our fastest aircraft, take when they try to make a turn, they have a huge turning radius, massive. These craft are moving at higher speeds than our aircraft, and they're stopping on a dime and turning immediately, like right-hand turns. Like we don't have the ability to do that. These craft are transmedium. They can travel between space and air and the ocean seamlessly. We don't have anything that can do that, right? These craft are defying the effects of gravity in ways that we don't have the ability to do. They have an energy source that is incomparable to our energy sources, right? They're doing incredible things, and it's not combustion energy. They are doing things that would require such great amounts of energy that it's not even comprehensible for us.
One of the things, Dan, that I love about the film is, and I mentioned that it's compelling, but there is also, in my mind, there is a crescendo. It builds as you go, and I'm watching this as a journalist, and I'm glued to it, because the storyline gets bigger as it goes. And the Legacy Project, I'm sure most Americans probably don't know what it is. And this cover up that you talk about in the film, again, I don't want to get too deep in the weeds because I want people to watch the movie, but this Cold War that you talk about that is going on currently, I think if people watch the movie, that would be a real inflection moment for a lot of people to say, wait a minute, I would believe this is happening given the nature of the superpowers on Earth and how we behave without knowing that there may be extraterrestrial life. But can you just touch on this reverse engineering and what is happening behind the scenes and why it is such a secret.
So many of the people in my film reveal that the U.S. is involved in a long-standing, deeply hidden Cold War race with adversarial nations like China and Russia to reverse engineer technology of non-human origin, this UAP technology. The stakes couldn't be higher. They refer to it as the Manhattan Project on steroids because, as we just talked about, this technology is so advanced that it would be a horrible thing if an adversarial nation cracked it before we did, right? Advanced technology can be weaponized. You know, there's that famous Kennedy space race speech where he says space technology, like nuclear technology, has no conscience of its own. It's up to mankind how it is used, whether it is used for good or evil. And it's the same thing here. This is far advanced technology. If we as a nation get in front of cracking it, we can use it for good, and we can, you know, play a role in making sure it's used for good, for the betterment of mankind, to revolutionize the way we live, and, you know, lead to scientific breakthroughs like clean energy or how we travel and get from point A to B. But it can also be used by bad actors for bad. It can be weaponized, and it can be weaponized to be far more destructive than nuclear weapons. And so there is a race right now to make sure the U.S. understands this technology before adversaries and really guides how it's used for good versus evil. Rubio and others, Senator Rounds, Gillibrand, talk pretty openly about how their biggest concern is China in this Cold War race, and that they are taking it extremely seriously, and we need to not only match but, you know, exceed their efforts. That I think the reality of it is, even if you are someone who can't wrap your head around the idea that we are dealing with non-human intelligent life, your average person has to accept the fact that if this is China or Russia that has leapfrogged us technologically and is penetrating our most secure airspace, like our nuclear weapon sites, our military bases, that is a problem in itself, right? So even if you have to wrap your head around it, if you have to tell yourself that this is an adversarial nation we're dealing with, then do that. But in reality, we're dealing with non-human intelligent life. And
I think that's funny because if you were to calculate it, like the odds, it heavily favors it being another country with advanced technology over extraterrestrial. So I'm not sure what model he's using, but yeah, it's actually more likely that it's terrestrial. And that's not a bias model. That's just an objective mathematical model.
And reverse engineered efforts by our adversaries.
A lot of times, especially if you're speaking to, you know, erudite individuals, you know, some of the counter argument is, well, you know, who's keeping it secret and why? And I thought just the way it hit me when Chris Mellon, former, you know, Assistant Secretary of Defense, was speaking, I just thought he really landed the counterpunch to that when he said, you know, you've got a group of individuals who are controlling what is arguably the greatest information, you know, ever held by any individuals. Of course, they're going to want to keep it to themselves because that is power. And that really hit home for me as far as a motive for not sharing it with presidents or, you know, senators, some of the most powerful people in this country. And I worry, as somebody who is a truth seeker, as yourself, that we may never know. In particular, towards the end of the film, you touch on the fact that there is legislation that still is you know, lingering, that may never be passed. We know how powerful the defense contractors are. But again, it stands to reason that this is arguably some of the most important information that has ever been known to mankind, and that we may never know the full extent of the truth. Is that safe to say?
I mean, I think it's definitely safe to say that this information is the most significant information in the history of humanity by far. I think that this film reveals so much that has been deeply hidden for 80 years. It is a conversation changer. There's no way to put the genie back in the bottle, as they say. I've been getting messages from senior senators and people that are involved in the administration all weekend saying basically the door's just been blown open and the government doesn't have any choice but to walk through it in some regard. I think it's only a matter of time before we see a sitting president step to the microphone and tell the world we're not alone in the universe and that the US intends to lead the way in this new chapter for humanity. I think that is going to happen as a result of this movie. The only question is when. I don't think we're too far off from that point.
That was one of my questions. I'm glad you answered that. I was curious, anytime I have spoken in my 30+ year career to a documentary filmmaker, I always ask, what did you start on a journey, and sometimes it's very revealing. And I'm just wondering if along this journey, have you come to any sort of decision-making or realizations with regard to intent, a benevolence, or something more nefarious with regard to the UAPs, with the fact that they have hovered over bases, that they have tapped into our nuclear capabilities? Are you optimistic? Are you worrisome about the future, given what you know? I know there are some things you can't even disclose, but after editing.
Okay, I'm a little confused. What does tap into our nuclear capabilities actually mean? Anyone? Does he mean like monitoring or reacting to it? Like, I swear I'm not trying to be an asshole. I really am trying to understand what he's saying. And I think what it is just another example of getting swept up in the narrative and getting swept up in the lore and not taking 2 seconds and actually researching it yourself.
Editing the film after having a chance to digest it, are you optimistic? Are you pessimistic about the future?
So, having just spent 4 years going down this rabbit hole and talking to a lot of people on the record and off the record, I'm now certain about a couple things. One of them is I don't think we're dealing with one non-human intelligent life. I think we are dealing with multiple species that all have different intentions and all come from different places. I think we are going to quickly find out that not only are we not alone in the universe, but that we are in fact surrounded by lots of life, and that we are in a melting pot of intelligent life throughout the galaxy. I think that's what we are on the verge of being told and finally being aware of, right? And so I think some of the non-human intelligent life that's here, that's found us, has benign intentions, but I do worry about the intentions of some other non-human intelligent life. There is a lot of attention paid to our nuclear weapon sites and our defense capabilities, to our harnessing of nuclear energy. The fact that we are coming up this technology curve where we're starting to do the things that they do, and maybe in our deeply hidden black programs, we already are doing those things. You could see, as some of the intelligence officials in my film reveal, you could understand and see how a more intelligent species that sees us coming up this technology curve and getting to the place where they're at, they might see humanity as a threat because we are a dangerous species. We're a warring species. 80 years after World War II, we're still invading sovereign nations. We're still threatening nuclear war. If you were a more advanced intelligent species, you'd be worried about our progress and that.
Sounds familiar. Almost like we've heard this before. I'm trying to think. I swear I think I've heard something like this before. Yeah. Thank you, Steve. It's so nice to know I'm not losing my mind. We go right from there have been unverified claims of unidentified objects over nuclear sites to the UFOs have linked into our nuclear capabilities. Exactly. Give it another 10 years and they'll have invented our nuclear technology. Stop it, y'all. You take away from the credibility when you project what you want to happen with what onto what is happening. Oh my God, I would be beyond thrilled if this world got rid of nuclear weapons. That would be amazing. Also, that's never going to happen. It's just not. And we need to, like, these people that put their hope in, like, an ET stopping some kind of nuclear attack, y'all are the worst. No alien species is going to stop us from killing ourselves. I assure you of that. In fact, if there are NHI, and I do believe there are, I believe they would be completely indifferent. Oh, the humans wiped themselves out? Saw that coming. Stop. Yes, Steve. We do need that t-shirt. Stop bullshitting. Be real with yourself. Quit trying to sell something. Like, if you care about this subject, why is your documentary $20 to rent? Shouldn't it be like 99 cents? Crazy. Okay, I'm sorry, get off my soapbox again.
You know, we're going to soon be a life form that they have to deal with. And so that might bring us to a crossroads. And that's that when you start having like those sober, honest conversations about that, that's concerning, you know?
And then last question, Dan, I don't tell people the truth when they ask me if I have a bucket list about my number one item on the bucket list. And that is just what you mentioned, that, maybe this film will open doors and get somebody to actually say it's time. Your confidence level that perhaps in the near future that we're going to get full transparency. I for one would like to know everything. Do you think we'll know everything in our lifetimes?
No, I don't look, I don't think we'll ever get full transparency from the US government because frankly, I don't think any responsible citizen would want the government to share literally everything they know about this. You want your government to keep you safe, and sometimes that requires keeping certain information secret for national security reasons. What I hope is that the base facts of the situation they become transparent about, where we have a president step to the microphone and say, yes, it is true. There is other intelligent life out there. We are not alone in the universe. Yes, it is true that the US government and other nations have retrieved crashed UAP of non-human origin and are actively in a race to reverse engineer this technology. Like those base facts, that I think needs to be shared with the public. I think the public deserves to know the base facts of the situation we're in. And I think that level of transparency is realistic in the near future. In the meantime,
I don't. I think as long as the folks are alive that ran these legacy programs, like Glenn Gaffney and others, I think as long as they're around and kicking, we're not going to get any kind of public disclosure from the government. It's just not going to come. I think we've gotten pretty much all we're going to get from Uncle Sam on this subject. If they open up that can of worms, all of a sudden these guys that look like good guys in the public eye start coming under scrutiny for some of these things. And if you think keeping a secret on that scale in this country, if you think that can be done without getting your hands dirty, you're being a little naive, I think. Why didn't we hear anybody whistleblow from the legacy programs? Why do you think? Because they're not breathing anymore. That's why. And then when you realize your coworker that sat next to you for 4 years, never missed a day, took a sick day or vacation day, all of a sudden they're not there anymore. And they were talking about how they felt bad about what you were doing beforehand, and now they're missing. Yeah, you're not going to open your mouth either. Oh, Steve. That's an interesting take. You think personally it's because there's no legacy programs holding any non-human tech or bodies. That's possible as well, my friend. And this could all just be secrecy in games for the purpose of hiding secret technology programs like the F-117A. Yeah, and I think that's very, very possible take. The non-human intelligence is abundant in the universe, but there's no evidence that they've ever been here. Now, you could argue with no evidence. Like you could, I guess I could make an argument there. It wouldn't be a very strong one. Yeah, and as far as the weirdness, and now I'm gonna sound like a crazy person, but I really think some portion of it may have to do with time travel. I don't know. I just have this, it's like a intuition, gut feeling I've had for a very, very long time in my life that there may be some time jumping, time travel, something. Yeah. Let's see. So I like that take though, Steve. Deceptions in games, no doubt, but even more than that, genuine belief and perception has fueled this topic. Absolutely. No good verifiable evidence, right? And we all say it time and time again. Like there's just, it's all words. It's all one big giant word salad until we get the proof. And don't get me wrong, there have been some very compelling videos. Even going back to the 60s, there was some pretty interesting videos. Once Arrow directed all those weird footage videos be sent to the National Archives online, you can go on there on their website and there is hours and hours and hours of fucking weird shit on video. Black and white, old as can be. So, I mean, we've been seeing these things since we've been recording the sky. And if you look at ancient art, like I just finished that book by Young on UFOs. Good Lord, in the 1500s, the 1300s, BC, before Christ, people are drawing these things in the sky, and it's not decorative. In many instances, they'll draw people, all of their heads and attention on these things in the sky, as if to make it clear they are looking at things in the sky. So, as I've said before, since recorded history, we've been recording these things. What they are, I mean, there's many scientific explanations for most of it. But there's still a percentage, it's a small percentage, but there's still a percentage that we just don't have explanations for. Those are the ones that are interesting to me. Yeah. Steve says, somewhere along the line, every piece of evidence requires me to trust or believe in people's word. That's a really low bar, considering many of these have been proven unreliable versus non-proven truthful. Right. It's like that Jaime guy and the Boogosphere. Do I find the Boogosphere fascinating? Yes. Especially when I see the video of it, you know, levitating around. I'm like everyone else. I see that. I go, wow, that is amazing. But then you look at the track record of the person that came forward with this thing. And you read the story of how the recovery actually happened. There's already strangeness. There's already gaps in time. The story goes, a very wealthy individual purchased it from this guy that recovered it from the jungle. But then, because he didn't know what to do with it, and all these people were asking him questions about it, he just gave it to Jaime. Like, are you kidding? You expect us to believe you shelled out a bunch of money for what you thought was a frickin' actual UFO, and then you're upset because too many people contacted you to ask about it, so you just gave it to one of the biggest known UFO scammers out there? Dude. And we're supposed to swallow that and go, yeah, it's just coincidence. It's pretty wild. Okay. So, as far as Rubio goes, it sounds not so much as of a backtrack as I stated at first, but more of a separation. Look, I'm all for looking into weird shit flying over our bases, our military bases in particular, that are unidentified and we don't know where they came from. Well, yes, you should be concerned about that in the Department of Defense, right? Or, excuse me, it's Department of War. I don't even think he's with them anymore. I think he's, was he DIA? Because he's not senator anymore. So his actual job title, as of late 2025, Secretary of State. Okay. Yeah. So acting National Security Advisor, acting Administrator of U.S. Aid, and acting U.S. Archivist. Very interesting roles to have. Especially, you know, I just mentioned the archives, so that's interesting. Yeah, I went through there too. See, whatever the truth is, this topic definitely has the greatest stories ever. That's for sure. There are, and you know, there's some genuine stories that are really, really interesting that are out there for sure. The bogus sphere. Oh, I like it, Ron. I like it. You crack me up, buddy. Okay. American Alchemy, Jesse Michaels, Joe Rogan was on the show. Jesse Michaels I think he's still on my shit list until he coughs up and pays Jeremy Rice the $50,000 he owes him for his gravitational experiment. Because Jeremy Rice and Falcon Space Labs did indeed capture the Byfield-Brown effect, doing the exact thing Jesse Michaels asked them to do, and then he just never paid them $50,000. Why? It's like pocket change to someone like Jesse, whose backer is Peter Thiel, who has more money than God. Why would you just pay it, dude? Like, it's so weird. Anywho, so Joe Rogan speaks to the age of disclosure in this interview here. And he also speaks to just some general things going on in the UFO community, kind of his thoughts and feelings on what's been happening recently. So we'll check this out and let me know your thoughts in the chat.
I had Dan Farah on the podcast yesterday.
How was that?
It was great. For people who don't know, Dan made this new documentary, The Age of Disclosure, which is excellent. It's one of the very best documentaries on the whole UAP, UFO phenomenon that I think I've ever seen. And there's no real footage in it, maybe a couple minutes of footage of like the Go Fast or the gimbal. But really, most of what it's about is high-level intelligence operatives explaining what they know. And
extremely high level.
Yes.
People like Woolsey and James Clapper, like these guys who are like DNI level, like overseeing all of the intel agencies, Brennan, you know, all these people. And
Marco Rubio, to his credit, I think his involvement was huge, you know, because it's the current administration, his involvement and his urgency.
Schumer, Rubio, all those guys are like, look, a bunch of freaking high-level officers came to us, and either they're crazy or the shit's real.
Most of these people at some point, or maybe even currently, have held very high clearances and high positions within our government.
So this is one of the things that Dan and I talked about. He firmly believes that both the United States and China has retrieved these crashed vehicles, and that they are also in this back engineering program. They're in a back engineering program of their own, and there is a race. And he, you know, people talk about it like it's the Manhattan Project on steroids, but I've heard that about AI too, right? But which might also be true. And they might also be connected in some way. I think what Rubio is concerned with is that China develops this technology first. And the only way that the United States is really going to catch up is if we open this up. And we open it up and remove all the ridicule, because forever, look, I'm a silly person, so it's easy to make fun of me. And I don't mind. I mean, literally professional comedian. So I'll say stupid shit and not worry, like, oh, people are going to think you're an idiot. I'm like, I'll tell you I'm an idiot. You don't have to like look to see if I'm an idiot.
I think you're much smarter than you give yourself credit for.
Listen, I know really smart people. It's relative. It's all relative.
You got that, like, that general breadth of knowledge. Like, not too many people are at your level, man. Like,
yeah, but it's also, you know what it's like? It's like people say like, oh man, you must be an amazing fighter. I'm like, listen, I work for the UFC. I'm around dudes who can kill me every single day I work there. Every one of them can kill me, no questions asked. Like, compared to a regular person, but to an untrained person, that's how I look at intelligence. It's like, I'm not as dumb as the dumbest people I know, but I know Elon's a friend of mine. You know what I mean? I'm friends with a lot of like very brilliant people. There's levels to this thing, you know. Like I had Palmer Luckey on the podcast the other day. Yeah, you start talking to him, you go, oh, okay. Well, there's levels to this, you know, and there's really fucking smart people in this world, and I'm not one of them. But I'm smart enough to know what I know, and I'm smart enough to not be afraid of people thinking that I'm not smart. So the subject has always been like very ridiculed and you could like really fumble your career if you went out and said, if you were a journalist or if you were like a legitimate author or like look at Whitley Strieber.
Yep.
I don't know what happened to that dude.
Yep.
But I know that everybody like sort of dismisses him as a kook in the real literature world because he's this guy who made these movies and books about being abducted by aliens. What? You know what I mean? So you immediately get this like smell of kook that's on you. And I think Marco Rubio talking about this and explaining like, this is what I've been told. This is what I know. This is a real thing. There are vehicles the size of a football field that are moving through the ocean at 500 knots. We have no idea where they're going. You know, Tim Burchett recently said that they've identified 5 areas in the oceans of the world where these things are coming out of on a regular basis.
We have a higher propensity of sightings around these 5 or 6, I believe, deep water areas.
So you've got these people talking about this, and it's slowly but surely removing that layer of ridicule. And that layer of ridicule is powerful, man. People don't like to be thought of as a fool, you know, and I think that holds us back. And if the United States, like, if first of all, they're going to need some sort of an amnesty thing. This is one of the things that we talked about. They're going to need, because for sure there was lying to Congress, for sure there's misappropriation of funds, and probably some corruption. Like when you have no oversight, billions, if not $1 trillion, like for sure somebody got some money they shouldn't have got. You're going to have to make all that okay. You're going to have to say, in the interest of national security and the future of the human race, fuck all that. You're going to have to do that. And if they don't do that, we're going to have a real problem, because these gatekeepers are going to continue to gatekeep because their lives depend on this. If they release this, they could find themselves in jail without any amnesty, in jail for the rest of their lives. Like, we don't know how much money was spent. We don't know how much lying to Congress there was. We have no idea how many felonies there were. We don't have no idea. Let's assume that crash retrieval programs were real and that back engineering programs were successful. So you're not going to give this stuff evenly to all these different defense contractors. So if you give one defense contractor one object, and all of a sudden they have this massive advantage, and then the other defense contractor winds up going under, as many of them have gone out of business, well, now you have a major lawsuit on your hands. You know, you have all sorts of, and then probably people are going to go to jail if it's a just legal system.
100%.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for, I think, the cynics out there who might just want to put a minus sign against anybody coming from the intelligence world and saying things, we're not even necessarily being idealistic about their motivations. We're just saying that it's probably national security runs the day, and that it might be the Manhattan Project 2.0. If you think about it, the first Manhattan Project was payload potency. It was bigger and bigger bombs. And there's even a scene in Oppenheimer where he's criticizing Teller because he's like, there is no target big enough for the H-bomb's way too big. And so beyond that, it's all about payload delivery. It's all about the stealth, ICBMs into stealth fighters, into whatever the hell they're working with now. And if they do have this technology, obviously they're going to open it up. And as much as I can be cynical, and anybody who's into UFOs is probably cynical about the intel world, it kind of makes sense that they'd let this stuff out now, because there is this arms race or whatever.
There's a race going on with both. Let's assume that stories are correct and that back engineering is real. Let's assume that they have recovered crafts. So there is a race with that. But then maybe even more critically and completely connected is the AI race, because I feel like that is the legitimate gateway to the cosmos. I feel like when we achieve sentience with artificial general superintelligence, when it has the ability to make better versions of itself, when it has the ability to devise new methods of power, new ways of using resources that we never even imagined.
Does anybody else think it's weird that, like, Jesse Michael's background looks almost like a carbon copy of Danny Jones's background now? Kind of strange. Weird. Also, I think my favorite podcast interview is Chris Ramsey's little skiff interview. I don't know if y'all have ever watched that show or watched an interview there, but that little skiff room he has, that's dope. I like that. I think that's super creative, super cool. Yeah, definitely weird similarities. But the UFO topic is a beat astro. Funny guy. I like it. Okay, I'll let him. I thought it's weird, observation. I was like, am I watching Danny Jones for a second? Because it's very similar.
Imagine, just like we have now that they never imagined in the 1400s, And I think it's going to happen very, very quickly. So if there is a back engineering program, and maybe there's some hurdles that we just can't get over, like how did they do this? Like, how is it possible to do that? Well, AI is probably going to figure out a possible way that it could be done, and what possible inventions could be made to facilitate this possible thing. And they'll probably just go ahead and start doing it.
And if not, it'll just lie to you.
Doing it. And when you have AI, and then you have the incomprehensible power of quantum computing, which is so baffling. It's so baffling that you go, wait a minute, what the fuck did you just say? One of the more recent ones, I believe it's the Google one. They solved an equation that would take the world's supercomputers, I think it was 2.6 billion years to solve, and it solved it in a matter of minutes.
It's so crazy. And then the Willow chip, they say the multiverse has to exist or whatever for it.
Like, what does that mean? The only way for it to solve this problem, Mark Andreessen said it on my podcast. He said the equation is so difficult to solve that if you took every atom in the universe and converted it to a supercomputer, the universe would die of heat death before it would solve this equation, and it solved it in minutes. So, like, what are we even talking about?
Yeah.
Now imagine that being connected to artificial general superintelligence, which is essentially a digital god.
Yeah.
You're going to make this thing that makes a better version of.
So getting into this subject is really interesting to me. The AI thing, it ties to a lot of stuff. And when I say that, I mean, last night, for instance, I was doing a space with a friend of the show, Black Magnet, about Tracy Twyman. And we listened to her very last podcast before her supposed suicide. Another questionable suicide of someone who was saying they weren't suicidal months beforehand. Happened to Virginia Giuffre. Happened to Amy Eskridge. Makes you wonder, what do you have to post for people to believe you're not suicidal before you get suicided? She was talking about being hacked. And towards the end of her last episode, she kind of had this theory that what was happening was beyond anything just one individual or group of individuals could do. And she was convinced. And this was in 2019. So this is before ChatGPT was even released. But she was convinced in 2019 that someone or some ones were leveraging this AI technology to make her life miserable. Messing with her accounts on social media, messing with her email accounts, doing all kinds of things. Clearly, she was targeted. And again, she thought, there's no way like a person could be doing this. This is like AI. And when Matthew Brown, the whistleblower about Immaculate Constellation, finally came out, one of the first things he mentions is AI, and that Sam Altman murdered the first sentient AI. I mean, I guess that would be murder, right? Like if something's sentient, you run a battery of tests, you decide this thing is aware, self-aware, sentient, whatever word or words you want to use for it. It's a thing. It's gone from a thing to a conscious thing. And if you pull the plug on that, yeah, that's definitely one way to look at it, as being murder. Then we have rumors of, well, wait a minute. Pentagon may have had access to some form of AI for years and years and years. They're talking decades. And if that's true, and it probably is, we have to then wonder who's making the decisions and how is this AI used? Who controls it? It's pretty incredible to think about, because the government stays ahead. Our intelligence agencies and our technology departments are well ahead of what's available to us in the civilian sector. They are decades past what we have here, what we can buy. They are way past that, which means when OpenAI pushed out ChatGPT, the government probably had AI or some form of LLM for a couple decades by that point. Now, we don't know which branches of the government. I would imagine probably one of the intelligence apparatuses. Sounds like a CIA thing. Doesn't sound too much like an FBI thing, but definitely sounds like a CIA thing. And you can't knock them for using it, really. When you're talking about security of the country, there's no rules, Ask Pete Hegseth. It's no rules. So it's interesting to kick around. And I hope there's a reporter out there that really wants to dig into that. Because I don't get paid enough to do all that. But I'll certainly support anyone doing that, that reports on that. Because I think there's some meat on that bone there.
Of this thing, it's going to be exponential. It's going to happen very rapidly. Well, what's the end of that? What's the end of that is all powerful, all knowing. And if you really want to get weird, that might be how God gets formed. I mean, that literally, like, God might be a real thing. That might be how God gets formed. And that might be the whole reason why human beings have curiosity and this insatiable desire for technological innovation. And not just to stay alive, not just to make better stuff, but this is why, because that if you just follow it out to its natural course, that's going to lead to an artificial life.
Yeah, I've heard you say that a lot before. That
like Rogan thinks AI could be like a god creating artificial whatever. It's an interesting take.
Patterns are almost built in to want more and more and more, and then we have to produce more and more in step, and we're like creating this.
Okay, so I think we got all we're going to get on the age of disclosure. Let's see if he touches on this again. Oh, here we go. Let's check out what he has to say about the moon landing, and looks like he touches on abductions as well.
Good for everybody.
You know, Danny just hosted the #1 moon landing hoax debunker, Bart Sibrel, who you have an amazing episode with, and one of the last living Apollo astronauts, Charlie Duke, who's 90 years old, and they went at it.
Yeah, I know. Danny texted me clips. He also told me that now he's convinced we didn't go to the moon.
Dude, he said that to me too. He was like, I think maybe they were MK Ultra to think they went to the moon, because he just apparently Charlie Duke just kept saying the same thing, which is like, I'm telling you how to bring back 200 pounds of moon rocks or whatever.
We spent 72 hours on the moon. We brought back 200 and, if I remember, 200 pounds of moon rocks or thereabouts. Where did 200 pounds of moon rocks come from?
I just showed you. Von Braun picked him up from Antarctica. There's a picture of that on the web, picking up lunar meteorites before he went to the moon for the first time. Seems like a weird use of his time. Moon rocks have proven to be fake. And according to a contractor that I spoke to at length, he says NASA has ceramics labs which can mimic moon rocks.
Well, I walked on the moon. I don't know about anybody else, but
John Young. You keep saying that. We know that. We've been saying it for 56 years, and you're not going to admit your guilt. Nobody who was, brought to trial for
we're just trying to
crime ever admitted
we're going
their guilt
through
either.
each piece of evidence and trying to rationally analyze what it means and let the audience decide.
Well, imagine, look, I described my dream, and
yeah, so Bart Sibrel's a tool. And I'll play my highlight reel of Bart Sibrel here in a moment, but I don't think Bart Sibrel in any way, shape, or form did himself any favors on that podcast at all. None. I thought it was just super ignorant, and God, I thought it was disrespectful at certain points. I mean, you have an astronaut that's 90 years old, 90, that's walked on the moon, and across from him you got this freaking couch potato, Bart Sibrel, telling him what's possible and what's not possible on the moon, quoting Wernher von Braun from a book in 1952 about why he shouldn't be able to walk on the moon. Okay, Bart. I don't know how. I'm just going to go ahead and disagree with Jesse on that one for sure. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. It's such a slap in the face to those that devoted so much of their life to this program, risked their life for this program. For some dude with a GED to get airtime on Joe Rogan and challenge you? Are you fucking kidding me? Unreal.
and my memory of my dream, which is really just my memory of my recollection of my dream. Imagine what his is like. What is his memories like? You know, I can tell you memories of profound things like knockouts from fights that I had I don't really remember them that well. Like somebody sent me a video that's on YouTube of me knocking out this guy in 1987 with a spinning back kick to the body. And it's like kind of crazy video because the guy goes flying through the air.
It's your famous kick.
I barely remember it. I barely remember it because I fought so many times, but also it's just too long ago. I know I did it. And then I saw the video. I was like, oh, that's how it happened. Wow. That's kind of crazy. But I don't really remember it. I remember my retelling of my memory. And now imagine it's a retelling of a memory from 1969. And you're fucking Biden's age.
Yeah.
You know, you're out there, man. He's barely there. If you listen to that guy when he's talking, like he's got a old battery brain.
Absolutely.
You know? He's not like those dudes in the Sumerian Kings list that are 30,000 years out and sharp as a tack. No, this guy's he's old, you know?
Yeah.
I think
but the Bart episode, like your Bart episode, and you steel man the entire time, the conventional, like, you know.
He got very frustrated that I was doing that.
He did, but I mean, you had to do it.
You have to.
You have to. And I came out of that being like, I'm kind of on the fence. Like, I invest in space stuff, and like I have a lot of friends in that world, and like they are adamant that we went to the moon.
I'm like, I at one point really liked Jesse Michaels just because like he seems so bright. You know, he seems like he definitely has an above average IQ. I mean, he must. But for him to entertain, like, did he watch a different episode? For him to entertain this guy saying we didn't go to the moon at all is pretty shocking to me, to be honest.
You know, there's supposedly like, lunar imagery that, of the landing site, the Apollo landing site, but
he must be having them coming on his show soon.
It's hard to say. I mean, there's a lot of weird stuff too. You were talking about the flammability of, for example, hyperbaric chambers.
Yeah.
There's that whole Gus Grissom, the guy who was supposed to walk on the moon, who they reversed the doors and then they made it 100% oxygen. Then he blew up inside the thing.
Also, Gus Grissom had hung a lemon on a hanger. He hung a lemon on a coat hanger outside of that thing because he said, we can't even communicate with the tower. How are we ever going to communicate when we're in space?
He was so frustrated, he kept complaining up the chain of command they wouldn't fix anything because the higher-ups knew they weren't going to go and hadn't committed yet to faking it and therefore hadn't told the astronauts yet. And in his fury, without permission, he held a press conference. He invited in a bunch of reporters to the top of the rocket where he affixed a lemon the size of a grapefruit on a coat hanger. He said, this thing is a lemon, a piece of junk, made the evening news. And a few days later, he dies. His wife told me that on January 26, he came home from work and...
Yeah, that's a great point, Steve. And that's something, God, I have to do for sure is check myself before I wreck myself, right? Like, these guys are in the entertainment business. And this is why I didn't want to pigeonhole myself to just covering UFOs, because I think at some point there's nothing left of it to cover, right? You can go through all those same stories only so many times. And maybe you have to start entertaining things you wouldn't normally entertain just for content's sake. And you're absolutely right. That could be what this is. This isn't like a genuine conversation about did we go to the moon or not. This is, I'm going to get an interview with Sabrell, so I'm going to start pumping it now, right? Like the mystique of it. For whatever reason, people are clicking on moon landing was fake. So here we go. And I just feel like that's intellectually dishonest. But that's his show, and it's very successful, and he can do what he likes. But it makes me second guess, and I have found myself watching it less and less the last couple months. That's for sure. I kind of only go to it when there's like a big interview or something like that. Yeah, views and money, for sure. Isn't that the truth? I'll tell y'all. Steve, you know what you're talking about, buddy. Yeah, when people are reasonable, responsible, and share reliable information, they don't make money. Irresponsible and sensational people. It's true. It's like the X thing where, you know, if you are being more dramatic and angry and vicious in your posts, all of a sudden that drives more engagement. And X doesn't care how you get the engagement, really, just that you're getting the engagement. And so a lot of these guys that get paid on X, you know, that's what they're doing, because that's what drives the engagement. Say something wild, say something mean to somebody, you know, say something shocking, damn the truth. You're trying to get engagement. So yeah, part of it is media and entertainment for sure.
And said the following: Hun, for some strange reason, the CIA is all over the launch pad today. I wonder why they're here inspecting the equipment. Never seen him here before. He's dead the very next day from faulty equipment.
So crazy.
This is what I say to people that think this is all foolish. Watch the Apollo 11 post-flight press conference. Watch it. It's like a hostage video. It's three guys that look like they're completely full of shit. They look nervous. They're fumbling. It's interesting. There's a guy online who is he's a body language expert, and he watched it and gave his notes on it. He's like, these guys are clearly being deceptive. Like, they're being deceptive. They're being deceptive. They're uncomfortable. They don't like that they have to do this. The way Neil Armstrong.
Deceptive. That's a new one.
Welcome to the Manned Spacecraft Center. This is the Apollo 11 press conference. The format.
Now, he doesn't look happy to be there. That's for sure.
Many of us and many other people in many places have speculated on the meaning of this first landing on another body in space. Would each of you give us your estimate of what is the meaning of this to all of us?
I think that we were timely in accepting this mission of going to the moon. It might be timely at this point to think in many other areas of other missions that could be accomplished.
Well, to me, there are near and far-term aspects to it. On the near term, I think it's a technical triumph for this country to have said what it was going to do a number of years ago, and then, by golly, do it, just like we said we were going to do it. Not just perhaps purely technical, but also a triumph for the nation's overall determination, will, economy, attention to detail, and 1,001 other factors that went into it.
Yeah, I mean, it's not exactly the excited group of guys you would expect just coming back from the moon, that's for sure. I don't know about deceptive. They just seem like they have a heavy mind and a heavy heart. And I feel like if you... I don't know if they could put into words what they were feeling. Right. First off, okay, so it's 69, so men don't talk about how they feel, first off, right? We don't get emotional back then. That's for pussies. Okay. So you got that going on. And you had gentlemen that left Earth's orbit, the first to do it and go to the moon, walk on the moon, stand on the moon, and look back at Earth. If you can imagine, like, how insane and overwhelming that would feel. It's hard to imagine it. Then they come back, they're stuck in that decontamination thing for whatever it is, 48 hours, 72 hours, whatever. They're debriefed, they're marched around, they're paraded, and then they're brought to this press conference. So, yeah, I mean, they don't look thrilled, but I think they just had a lot of shit on their mind, to be honest with you. Steve says he wouldn't want to be there either with the questions they were asking. Yeah, they were flyboys. They weren't professional media folks. They weren't known for their on-air personality, that's for sure. Yeah, there were things obviously that they couldn't discuss, right, for classified reasons. But yes, none of them equal the landing was a hoax. And you can get into the Van Ryan belt stuff. Van Allen belt. I don't know why I keep calling it the Van Ryan belt. You can get into the Van Allen belt stuff. But there is a way to get through it safely. These guys did it. In fact, we did it 6 or 7 times. It's possible because we did it. Absolutely, Steve. Yep. To say it was fake is to take away from so many good people's hard work. Don't get me wrong. If it was fake, really fake, I'd be like, well, too bad for those people. They worked hard on some bullshit. But it wasn't fake. It was real. And we had a group of incredible people take us to the moon. In fact, we had the Apollo 13 mission go wrong. Those gentlemen went through the Van Allen belt. So was that fake? See, if we faked the moon landing, why wouldn't we just fake all the bad stuff? Any bad thing that happened, why wouldn't they have just lied about it? Do you think they wanted to report that 3 astronauts burned alive in a capsule that we couldn't get them out of? Do you think they want, like, if they're all about lies, why wouldn't they have lied about that? It doesn't make sense. Oh, absolutely. Because that's how good people are, Steve. You know, they're humble. And it says, most astronaut interviews I've listened to over the decades relay that the majority of them are embarrassed by the high praise and feel it forgets the many people who work to make it happen. Right? That's because they're good people. That's why they were chosen to be astronauts. There's so much that goes into choosing an astronaut. It's not just can he physically or can she physically handle it. There's a lot to it. All right, switching gears up a little bit here. Have you all ever watched the show Expedition X? I've seen it here and there. My wife is a huge fan of the show. It's when it's just her and the TV in a room or something, it's always on. It's always going to be Expedition X. Freaking loves that show. Well, apparently, this show may have found a UFO. I have not watched this, so this is my first time watching this. Wife said I needed to watch it, and I figured I would share it with y'all. I don't know if you've ever watched the show, but basically, it's a show where this gentleman travels the world, and they look for